I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on GBM, we're tackling one of the biggest health concerns facing millions of Americans and actually people around the world: dementia and Alzheimer's. We're talking about a powerful, life-changing book. It is called The Boomer Brain for baby boomers concerned about dementia and Alzheimer's. It is written by a terrific author and gerontologist. Her name is Patricia McCarthy Faust. This groundbreaking book dives into how aging affects the brain, what causes those changes, and most importantly, how to fight back. Backed by science and filled with practical tools, the Boomer Brain is a roadmap to keeping your mind sharp, your memory strong, and your future bright. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today. We thank the team at Atticus Publishing for helping us put her on TV today, and we ask viewers like you to support authors like her by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing her amazing book. The links are below this interview. Patricia, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Hi, I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
Really happy to have you on the show. This is an important topic. Either somebody in your family has Alzheimer's or dementia, or they will. It seems like it's as simple as that. If you live long enough, there's going to be some kind of problem. Is it because we're living longer? Is that why we seem to be seeing a skyrocketing caseload of dementia and Alzheimer's?
I think that's probably the cause. There's risk factors. What we've determined is that 70% risk of developing dementia is due to lifestyle. And so here we're finding out that hearing loss is a big risk factor for dementia, or eating the wrong foods, all the ultra processed foods that are out there right now. All of these things impact the brain. And I think that the other part is that the longer you live, your risks of getting dementia or Alzheimer's increase. When you're in your 70s, it's about 1 in 5 people get Alzheimer's. Move up to 80, it's 1 in 3, and then it's 50% chance when if you make it to the 90s. I like to use Bruce Springsteen's mom as an example of this. She was in her 90s when she died, and they said she died from dementia. However, she didn't have dementia before she hit the 90s. If she had died in her 80s, she wouldn't have had that diagnosis. And so that, goes to show you that our longevity is fragile, and so we have to know how to deal with it.
Exactly. Think about this. By the time somebody hits 90, they might not have worked for 30 years or more.
Easily, yeah.
And if you're not working, you're often not using your brain. I'm not saying we should never retire, but I do think that, like your heart, although your brain isn't actually a muscle, it does need exercise. Do you agree?
I absolutely agree. That's really an important thing to bring up. I talk a lot to financial professionals about their clients who are getting ready to retire and the value of having a lifestyle post-retirement that they have a purpose. And so they feel like they still have something to get up in the morning to be excited about. And we are also connected to other people. It's socialization is a critical part of brain health. We're hardwired to be with other people. And a lot of times when people retire, they haven't figured out where else to go. They don't have their work family anymore. And I've known a few people that stay home and watch TV all day, and they're declining quickly in their 60s. And
Yeah.
so these are issues that I talk about all the time with an aging brain and how you really have to take care of it.
Yeah. How much control do you think we really have over our brain as we age? And what are some of the things we can do to keep it younger?
Well, first of all, normal aging changes in our brain cause losses of brain volume, of brain mass. And that starts to happen in our 40s. We're not replacing every of the cells or the neural fiber connections that we had grown so extensively in our younger years. Now, when we lose them, we lose them. And so there's a few different parts of the brain that are really affected more by brain aging losses. That's the prefrontal cortex, the area right behind your forehead, and that's the executive function center of your brain. The hippocampus, we actually have two of those, and they're like deep brain right behind in the ear area, the temporal lobe area, and then the amygdala, and that's the emotional center of the brain. They take big hits as we get older because of the lifestyle that we're leading. And so our ability to make good decisions, to be able to keep our memories crisp, be able to actually take in memories, taking in a memory is hard. It's hard for our brain. And we have to be really exact on how we get that initial electrical signal in there. So there's so many things that can happen, and we don't realize they're happening until we're suffering, we're really struggling. And so it's been going on all the time. We lose about 5% of brain mass every decade after the age of 40. So think of that. By the time you get to 80, you've lost 20% brain mass. So you are required, I figure you're required to come back and replace that. And that's what the brain healthy lifestyle does. It starts to help you replace the losses you're sustaining, and then it actually gets your brain working on a higher, more reasonable level. It is there's just a lot that happens with aging that we don't realize. And so when you start to understand it, then you're not as critical of yourself and you're not as scared, but you also need to know what to do to reverse that. And I'm writing a blog right now. It's like, yes, boomers, you can still change your brain. So it's
Wonderful.
yeah, it's
What are some of, let me ask you this. What are some of the steps to having a healthy aging brain? What should we do? You mentioned purpose. You mentioned diet. You
right.
mentioned socialization. Those are three of the big keys.
So actually, the brain healthy lifestyle is this. You need to be physically active. Our prehistoric ancestors, to survive, had to keep moving. And it was so critical to their survival that it became a DNA link for us. We have that hardwiring. And so we need to move in order for our brain to stay functioning. What happens when we're moving is we're creating activity which makes our heart beat faster. And our heart sends up 20% of the blood, oxygen, and carbs from every heartbeat to our brain. There's two reasons that's so important. Our brain's an energy cannibal, but it doesn't have its own energy source. And so, say if you've been working in front of a computer all day and you're just drained and you can't think anymore, it's like your brain dead. Well, that's because you haven't gotten up and gotten your heart involved in this to send the carbs, oxygen, and blood up there that they can draw the energy source from. The other thing that happens when you get up and move is that flush of blood that hits the prefrontal cortex initiates a brain chemical called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Big long word. BDNF will actually stimulate new neuron stem cells. Now, it was never believed that we could grow brain cells again, ever. That's called neurogenesis. This was a huge, huge discovery. And so when you're moving, you're actually creating the start of new brain cells. So we have to move on to the second part of that, which is mental stimulation. When you're working, you're challenged, you're making your brain work hard. It's also good for your brain because you're making new cells, you're making new neural connections, and your brain maintains its volume. The neural connections are actually all the wiring, the hard wiring, the wiring that's going through our brain, sending the electric signal. Our brain's electric. And it also has neurotransmitters, which are little chemical gaps between the neuron fibers, between cells. No brain cell touches another brain cell. So in order to send the signal through, it has to go over a chemical gap called the synapse. Well, when you're stimulating your brain, when you're really challenging your brain, you're starting to fire new neural fibers. And so you're sending more electrical signals through. This is really important because we lose this. Those neural fibers are what compose most of the mass, the brain mass that we lose. So we need to be continually growing, making new ones. So when you challenge your brain and you do something repetitively and consistently, your neural fibers start firing again, and you're replacing that mass. And so it doesn't matter. You don't have to do something academic. You learn to play an instrument, learn another language, travel where you don't know where you are and what the language is. Anything to make your brain work harder. Now, that'll use the new cells that you just made when you were moving around, physical exercise, and you're making the new neural fibers, and this is called neuroplasticity, and that is the ability of your brain to change. So you're replacing those losses, you're helping with communication in your brain. Those two are critically important. All of these are critically important. All these pieces do something different. First one, make new cells. Second one, make new neural fiber connections. The third one is nutrition. And this is probably, I feel, is going to be one of the centerpieces of brain health. It's because of what they're discovering now with microbiome. And we have a brain in our gut. It's called the enteric brain. We actually have three brains: cranial, cardiac, and the enteric brain. And the enteric brain does all of these jobs that we think it's going on in our cranial brain. And so I think the nutrition brain's very specific on what it needs to function. And the Mind diet, or you might have heard of the Mediterranean diet. The Mind diet is a combination of the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet, which was a heart diet. Put those together, and you're getting the nutrients that you really need for your brain to function on a high level. Everybody always asks me about supplements. I don't recommend any supplements only because so far they haven't proved really valuable in brain health. The brain really depends on getting it through food sources and natural sources. So it's be nice if you could just be able to take a pill and make it all work, but it
Right.
doesn't work that way. The
Yeah.
next one is socialization. And again, we're hardwired to connect. Again, our prehistoric ancestors had to travel in groups. They could not be isolated because if they were isolated, they were killed or they died. So that became a really instrumental part of our brain. And we have the hardwiring for that. Now, the one thing that socialization does is it really increases cognitive reserve. And cognitive reserve are all that you're creating extra cells and neural connections to be able to keep your brain at a high level. When you're with other people, you're talking, you're discussing, you feel like somebody's looking out for you, you're looking out for someone else. The social connection is really critical to brain health. And it is one of the pieces that really puts all these other things together by, by creating that you're amassing cognitive reserve. The next one's sleep. And sleep this was sort of recent within the last 10 years that sleep became a big issue. There's a couple things that happen when you're asleep. Your brain is definitely not resting when you're sleeping. When you sleep, um, all the memory input that you took in during the day, all the electrical signals you took during the day that you want to use for memory, are sitting in the hippocampus, the center of learning and memory. And they're waiting for the hippocampus to be able to not have to do everything else. And the signals are sitting there in working memory, waiting for the hippocampus to pick them up. And what the hippocampus does is it looks around at all the neural connections because our memories are actually saved in the synapse. What I had mentioned before, brain is just so amazing. Anyway, the hippocampus looks around to see if there's any other encoded memories that are similar to the one that you just took in. And if there is, it just consolidates that memory you just brought in with the one that you already had. Now, the benefit is that signal's much stronger and it'll be much easier for you to recall it. But your original memory will never be the same because you've been adapting and adapting throughout the years. The other thing that it does is if it doesn't see a another memory in there, it will encode it, and so that memory will be encoded. There's all kinds of criteria necessary for the signal to be strong enough, and that's why making memory when you're older is really difficult. I don't want to go into that because it's a whole big topic. Another
Right.
thing that happens when you sleep is your brain has a cleaning system. It's called the glymphatic system, and those are glial cells, which are other brain cells, and they form channels throughout your brain, and cerebral spinal fluid flows through these channels and actually cleans your brain. It cleans out the debris, the toxins, the anything else that might have accumulated during the day. It cleans it out. And so that is a critical piece because people who don't sleep aren't getting the advantage of having all of this crud, brain crud, cleaned out on a regular basis. And that can really be detrimental. Sleep loss is a high risk factor for dementia. So the
Fascinating
other
stuff.
one is
We're
stress.
almost out of time, so we'll save
Oh,
it for the
oh my
book.
gosh. Okay.
There's a lot more in the book, and it's
Yes, yes, yes.
fascinating. But it's interesting because a lot of this is also challenging. People's appetite decreases when they're older.
Right,
I
right.
think that they need fewer calories, so it's important to have highly nutritious food. Sleep can be elusive when you're older as well. Finally, when you no longer have to work and wake up to the 6 o'clock whistle,
Right.
then you can no longer sleep. But absolutely, those are critical areas of focus for people to work on and to read and learn more about in this wonderful book. The name of the book is The Boomer Brain for baby boomers concerned about dementia and Alzheimer's. And all of us must be. We have to be. It's almost a part of aging if you don't do as Patricia prescribes in this book. It really is a game changer. It is an essential guide to understanding, protecting, and rejuvenating your mind because it's never too late to change your brain. Patricia, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm really happy to have been here.
Really happy to have learned from you and appreciate this wonderful work on this book. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford for the Global Book Network. So long for now.